Record. Okay, great. You should have gotten the announcement. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maria Lagarde, and I'm one of the transplant hepatologists here at Einstein Hospital. I'm joined today by our registered dietitian, Amy Ryan, who is the Department of Transplantation general dietitian, but also helps us with taking care of patients with complex liver disease, including those with metabolic dysfunction associated fatty liver disease or steatotic liver disease, and is very helpful in answering some of the most common questions that patients have regarding their nutrition and this very complex disease. So thank you, Amy, for joining us, and
Thank you.
we will let you participate. Thanks again.
Okay, thank you for logging in. This presentation is about nutrition and exercise and all the lifestyle changes you can do to help with the treatment of fatty liver disease. So, fatty liver disease, I'm sure your hepatologist has explained to you. It's exactly as it sounds. It's excess fat in the liver. And for some people, this can lead to inflammation and scarring of your liver. And for some of those people, it can lead to cirrhosis, which is advanced liver disease. But with nutrition and lifestyle changes, that is imperative to help with the treatment of fatty liver disease. It can even slow or even reverse the progression for some people of fatty liver disease. Um, Fatty liver disease is associated with other metabolic conditions like obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. Um, the good news is that the nutrition I'm going to talk about today is also the same diet as somebody would tell you for all of these other conditions. Um, and with nutrition and lifestyle change, you can help all of these metabolic conditions listed here, except you can't change your genetics. But nutrition and exercise can help with these other metabolic conditions. Um, the treatment for fatty liver disease, the main treatment is weight loss and physical activity. Uh, a weight loss of about 10% is typically the goal. So if somebody is starting out at 300 pounds, 10% would be about 30 pounds. So that means that person would weigh 270 pounds, but they lost 10% of the weight. That's the clinically successful amount of weight loss. So we're not asking you to get back down to a weight that you were in high school or, an unrealistic amount of weight, but 10% is been shown to help with fatty liver disease. And physical activity, movement, that can help with insulin resistance. That can help your body be more sensitive to insulin, and that's really important with fatty liver disease. We're mostly going to talk about nutrition in this presentation. Um, there is some slides on exercise at the end. Um, the most important thing you can do in your diet is to reduce any simple or refined carbohydrates. So that's going to help control your blood sugar, which is going to help minimize the amount of fat deposited in your liver. And it's inevitably going to help you reduce the amount of calories you consume. Because as you can see, many of these simple carbohydrate foods are foods that are really easy to overeat or often what's termed as hyperpalatable foods. Um, so of course, everybody first thinks about the cookies, the cakes, the muffins. Um, we're talking about cereal. Cereal usually is marketed to make you think it's healthier for you than it actually is. It's usually just simple carbs, not very much fiber, not very much protein. And I think if you pay attention, you might find if you eat a bowl of cereal, you're probably going to be hungry very quickly after, and that's why. Basically, any puff-like snacks, chips, pretzels, even things like veggie sticks make you think they're good for you, but they're really not giving you very much benefit nutrition-wise. Your sweet breakfasts, your pancakes, your waffles, your muffins. And then you have your white pasta, your white rice, your white bread. So I understand that these are staple foods for many cultures, and I don't expect you to totally cut these out of your diet, but I care more about your portion size of them. So trying to limit to 1 cup, measure with a measuring cup, like if you were measuring with flour, 1 cup of cooked rice or pasta per a meal. So if you measured it out, it wouldn't be enough food. So you have to really balance out that plate with a protein and a vegetable source, which you'll see as we go on. This is probably the most important slide of the whole presentation. Any sugar sweetened beverage is a particular concern in fatty liver disease. So, of course, it means soda. I'm also talking about any type of regular of juice, any type of regular juice, um, sports drinks, your lattes, your iced coffees, if they have any type of flavored creamer in them, they're probably sugar sweetened. A lot of your bottled teas, unless it says unsweetened on it, it's probably going to be sweetened. If it has any calories in it at all, that means it's a sweetened tea. And especially if it uses words, well, if it may use words like ginseng and honey, it makes you think it's better for you than it actually is. Honey is just another word for a sweetener. And then your smoothies. So I hear all the time people say, I've started eating healthier, I started drinking smoothies. Well, in actuality, what the individual is doing is they're maybe blending up 2, 3, 4 different types of fruit. So it's usually more fruit than you would ever consume if it was whole fruit. They may be adding a base, a calorie dense base like milk or, full fat yogurt. And then it just becomes a very calorically dense, high carb drink that you're adding to your day. So you're adding those calories to your day. And usually when something's liquefied, it doesn't fill you up the same. So it's might not be replacing a whole meal. So when we are trying to lose weight, you got to take calories away. But now they're adding probably 3, 4, 500 calories in their smoothie to their day. So they're accomplishing the opposite. So smoothies is something that I typically don't recommend. And then on the right side here, this comes from the American Heart Association. They have specific recommendations for added sugar. Um, Added sugar is on the nutrition facts label now. And I put these numbers here, not so that you can count every little gram of added sugar, but more so that you have a reference point. So if you pulled out a yogurt, for example, some yogurts might have 9, 10, 14 grams of added sugar. But if you don't know how many is the max or what's the recommended max amount you're supposed to have, that 14 grams of added sugar means nothing to you. So now that you know for a woman it's 25 max and for a man it's 36 max, you can look at that yogurt and be like, wow, this yogurt is almost half of my sugar for the whole day. You know what? I'm going to put this one away and I'm going to try to choose a lower sugar one. So complex carbs, this is where we want your carbohydrates to come from. Simply put, complex carbs are going to come from the original plant source that carbohydrates originate from. So any kind of plant in full that's intact is going to be a complex carb. So your beans, your lentils, brown brown rice is more is closer to the original rice plant than white rice is. Um, your starchy vegetables like whole potatoes, corn, peas are a little starchy as well. Your whole pieces of fruit, nuts. And then I added milk and yogurt in here. They do have natural lactose in them, so they do contain carbohydrates. But this slide is where we want your carbohydrates to come from. Um, if you're somebody who's looking for something very specific, like to count, something very objective, this slide might be for you. Typically point patients to carbohydrate counting because it really helps monitor your portion sizes of some of these hyper palatable foods. So if you're a woman, that's about 30 to 45 grams of carbohydrate per meal. So if you're having a sandwich, a slice of bread is typically 15 grams of carbs. So the two slices of bread on your sandwich, that would be the carbohydrate for the meal. A cup of rice is 45 grams of carbohydrate. That's where I got that serving size from. If you're a man, it's 45 to 60 grams per meal. Okay, saturated fat is the next nutrient to talk about. So saturated fat is associated with fatty liver disease. Um, if you have high cholesterol, this is a particular concern because saturated fat is associated with higher cholesterol. So if you have high cholesterol, reducing your saturated fat is important. And also, when you reduce your saturated fat intake, you're probably reducing your overall fat intake, so that's going to help you lose weight. The first question I always get is, what about red meat? So red meat is anything that was a mammal and is alive, that's considered red meat. And red meat has a higher saturated fat content than poultry like chicken or turkey. So the American Gastroenterology Association wrote these recommendations. So this is less than 2 portions of red meat per week and less than one portion of processed meat. I'm sorry, this got a little skewed here, per week. Um, if these numbers, less than 2 portions of red meat per week, is not a realistic goal for you, I strongly encourage you to focus on your processed meat intake. So that would be things like your sausages, your deli meats, bacon, scrapple, hot dogs, those types of meats listed here. And also anything that's battered and fried, like chicken nuggets. Um, these types of meats tend to be the fattiest and the saltiest. So trying to reduce your processed meats first is much more important. I'd rather see you reduce your processed meats um, and eat a steak once in a while than the opposite. Other sources besides red meat of saturated fat are your full fat dairy products. So your cream, your butter, your ice cream. And there are two plant sources in the world, coconut oil and palm oil, which you might see in like processed like foods like movie theater popcorn might have that. Coconut oil, if you notice, if you ever buy it, it's a white solid substance. So any fat that's solid at room temperature is a good indicator that it's higher in saturated fat. So these sources are where we want your fats to come from. These are called unsaturated fatty acids, and these are cardiovascularly, especially healthier fats. So of course you have your fatty fish, your salmon, tuna fish. Those are considered fatty fish. Avocados, they are actually a fruit that actually is very high in fat. So because of that, they have the healthy fats, but they also are very calorically dense. So one normal avocado might run you 250 calories. So we want your fats to come from sources like avocado, but it still is very important to watch your serving size of them. And same thing with nuts. A handful of nuts, a quarter cup of nuts can run you anywhere from 150 to 200 calories. What type of oil should I cook with? Um, these ones listed here are have more unsaturated fats. The avocado or olive oil has a low smoke point, so if you try to saute with that, you might find it smokes very easily. So the top avocado, canola oil might be better for that. And then looking at how you cook your food really matters. So bake, broil, air fry, grill, those are all lower fat methods of cooking. And try to avoid frying or submerging something in oil or using a lot of oil on the bottom of a pan. So if you Google fatty liver disease, you're inevitably going to see information about or verbiage on the Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet, it's not a very specific diet. It's more of like a diet that they observe from certain parts of the world, the Mediterranean. But it's a diet that, just like I talked about, it's higher in fruits and vegetables and whole grains. It is higher in fish and seafood, but very low in meats and sweets. And it's one of the most studied diets with fatty liver disease. Now, if you Google excuse me, the Mediterranean diet, you may see, especially in older material, you may see language of moderate amounts of red wine and that kind of thing, which in fatty liver disease, of course, we want you to avoid alcohol. So that is the main thing, that it's specific with the Mediterranean diet and fatty liver disease. We want you to avoid the alcohol. But otherwise, the Mediterranean diet, it's like I said, prioritizes fruits, vegetables, whole grains, plant sources of protein like your beans, your lentils, your whole grains, just like we talked about. The main takeaways that I want you to take away from this presentation are to reduce your processed foods. So if there's anywhere you're drinking a sugar sweetened beverage, and a good way to figure that out is if your beverage has any calories in it, it's probably going to be sugar sweetened. It is going to be sugar sweetened. Um, think about your typical day and where are your refined carbohydrates, especially think about your snacks and the sides on your meals. Are there anywhere you can reduce those? Do you eat any kind of processed meats? Um, and then remember, the most hyper palatable foods are usually the foods that are a mix of carbohydrates, fat, and salt. So if you think every meal, where's my protein, where's my fiber, chances are those meals are going to be very filling. And this is an example of that. So this is a donut from Dunkin' Donuts. It's 270 calories. For that same amount of calories, you can eat this meal on the right, which is 3 scrambled eggs mixed with arugula and a cup of strawberries. I think everybody would agree that the scrambled egg meal is going to fill you up for longer than a donut, which is typically an afterthought to your breakfast. You know, you're getting a breakfast sandwich, you say, just throw on a donut. You know, it doesn't fill you up the same. And that's because if you look at the nutrients, the macronutrients, you can see that there's less carbs, there's more fiber, and there's about over 5 times more protein. So that's why this scrambled egg meal fills you up way more than this hyper palatable food like a donut does. When you're thinking of your breakfast, instead of, these very highly processed breakfasts, you can think about something like this. This is plain Greek yogurt is highest in protein, or low-fat cottage cheese mixed with whole pieces of fruit. So I say get the plain so that you can control then how much sugar and how much carb goes back into the yogurt. Whereas if you buy a pre-sweetened yogurt, you have no control over how much sugar is in that yogurt. Also, some people are surprised that I put cottage cheese on this list because cottage cheese can be high in salt. It it is higher. It's about 300 or so milligrams of sodium per serving. However, for that 300 milligrams of sodium, you're getting about over 10, closer to 15 grams of protein. So it's an excellent spend of that sodium. Um, so that's why it's on the list. Um, Oatmeal, as a dietitian, I have a love-hate relationship with oatmeal. Yes, oatmeal is a whole grain. It does have some fiber in it, but I think most people don't eat plain oatmeal. I think majority of the time you're getting a sweetened oatmeal or you're adding some honey or some sort of sweetener or sugar to oatmeal. Plain oatmeal by itself is very bland. But if you like oatmeal, try to get the plain. And then I added here, this is a quarter cup of shaved almonds and a little bit of chia seeds. You don't need a lot. You don't, that's like 60 calories for a tablespoon of chia seeds. You don't need that many. Just a little bit to add a little bit more fiber. Eggs, hard-boiled eggs are a quick grab and go meal. One egg gives you 7 grams of protein. Um, if you're making an omelet and you want to reduce the calories and fat even more, you can use a couple of egg yolks and then mix in some egg whites to really up the protein in that meal. But eggs, they get a terrible rap because of what's called dietary cholesterol. And at one point in time, they thought dietary cholesterol affects your blood cholesterol more than it actually does. Um, we, we worry more about those saturated fats I mentioned earlier with your cholesterol. So eggs, hard-boiled eggs, grab and go if you're on the move can really fill you up in less than 100 calories. Um, these are some examples of some pretty processed lunches. So this came from a study that the National Institute of Health did. They have like a metabolic ward and they do really small but really controlled studies. So in the nutrition world, it's really hard to control their studies. So they're small studies, but they teach us a lot. And this particular study, they had 20 people. So again, it is small, but they had 20 people live in their metabolic world for 4 weeks. And for the first 2 weeks, they were given a highly processed diet. And for the second 2 weeks, they were given an unprocessed diet. But what they were able to control for, and they had very smart dietitians on their staff, I'm sure, because it's hard to do, they controlled for how much protein they equaled how much protein, how much carb, how much fat, and how much fiber were between the two legs of the study. So that's why you see in these pictures there's like 3 Crystal Light drinks. Well, they had to use that much drinks to match the amount of fiber. So they had to mix that much fiber packets in those drinks to match the fiber in the unprocessed section. And they allowed the participants to eat as much as they wanted for both wings of the study, and they asked them were they happy, were they full, and all kinds of things. And they found they ate 500 more calories a day when they were eating processed foods than when they were eating unprocessed foods. However, they said they were equally as happy, equally as satisfied on both wings of the study. So just another example, if you try to reduce how much processed food you eat, you're automatically, without even thinking about it, you may eat less calories. So this is an example of an unprocessed meal they were given. So it's a salad with grilled chicken. There's bulgur and sliced apples in there. So they're complex carbs. It's a homemade dressing with olive oil, lemon juice, and a vinegar. This is an example of, and I found this recipe on a nonprofit organization called Old Ways. They promote the Mediterranean diet, but they do so in a more culturally diverse way. So you're not going to see all Italian or Greek recipes. You'll see some African, you'll see some Asian recipes on there as well. But this is a way you can think about a sandwich. So instead of having a processed deli meat, you can keep leftover grilled chicken breast for your sandwich the next day, and you can really pile it high with vegetables for your crunch and extra flavor. And then you use avocado instead of, a lot of cheese for their fat. If you need a quick lunch, like a bento box, which is a Japanese term for a container with small little sections, um, is another idea you can do. Just make sure you try to keep at least one portion of that bento box of protein. So this is tuna salad made with light mayo. Um, Light mayo saves you a significant amount of calories than full fat mayo. Full fat has 90 calories a tablespoon, light has 30 calories a tablespoon. You can use like a cowboy caviar as your protein if you want to do a meal. So cowboy caviar is like usually about two or three different types of beans, maybe a corn in there, and then usually it's like a lime and a little bit of oil kind of dressing with seasonings that you like. You could do, chili pepper. You could do whatever kind of seasonings you like in there. And then trying to make a larger portion of your plate of this box, the vegetable, a fruit. That's what a quarter cup of cashews looks like. So again, it's not a lot. And then a whole grain crackers. So these are some examples of some highly processed dinner options that were given in that study I mentioned before. And these are some examples of some of the unprocessed dinner options. I think the main theme here is look how much vegetables are on these plates. This is a stir fry with broccoli, peppers, onions. That's a beef. It's a teriyaki stir fry. Some whole pieces of oranges, and that's what a quarter cup of pecans looks like. This is salmon, a boatload of green beans, berries, yogurt, and sweet potatoes. And I always laugh because this salmon meal is so much food and it's similar amount of calories offered as this two hot dogs meal. So I don't know about you, but I could eat two hot dogs in 30 seconds flat and not think twice about it and probably not be that full. But if I ate this salmon meal with all that fiber from all those veggies, I'd be pretty full for a very long time. Um, this is an example on the left here of how you could do pasta. So this is 1 cup of whole grain pasta that is cannellini beans for the protein and asparagus to help fill out the bowl. And this is another recipe from Old Ways. I estimate that to be about what a cup of rice looks like. It might be a little bit more, but it's about what a cup of rice looks like. And this is a fish curry recipe. Again, tons of veggies. Um, these are some examples of some processed snacks. So in the study, they put these peanut packets as the process. I'm guessing they put them in there because they were salted peanuts, salted flavored peanuts. Peanuts by themselves are not a processed food, but if they have, a sugary coating on them, that would make them processed. Some ideas for snack listed here. But my main message about snacking, especially if you're trying to lose weight, is try to think about why are you snacking. Um, think back if you feel hungry in between meals, think back to the meal you had before. Did it have enough protein and fiber in it to get you through? Um, we as humans snack for all different kinds of reasons. We snack because we're bored. We snack because we have association with watching TV and snacking. So really think about, why are you snacking? Are you truly physically hungry, or are you snacking for some other reason? Um, this is comes straight from the dietary guidelines for Americans. These are two burrito bowls. Neither of them are particularly low in calories, but the orange one is 400 more calories than the blue one. So how did they do that? The blue one looks like it has way more food in it. Um, they reduced the serving of rice. They added more vegetables. But the main thing that they did was they reduced how much fat was in the bowl. So the high calorie bowl has guacamole, sour cream, and cheese. Whereas the low calorie bowl only picked one type of added fat, and that's the avocados. They said they used reduced fat cheese. But so they choose one type of fat, sliced avocados. That's the main calorie difference. And then the other difference is they use a sweetened tea in the high calorie bowl and an unsweetened tea in the low calorie bowl. These are additional resources. Old Ways, American Heart, American Diabetes Association have tons of recipes on their website. You can, if you want to keep a food log, there are a few different apps. MyFitnessPal, Lose It are the two popular ones. Um, this is my message on food logs. You use a food log when you're trying to learn about your diet and where your calories are coming from. For most people, it's not realistic to do a food journal every single day. It's a lot of work. So you take 3 days. So take a work day, a non-work day, and a weekend day, and track your food on those days, because those days look different nutrition wise. They tend to, weekends, maybe you're eating out more, whereas when you work or on a weekday, you have more of a regimented diet. So weekends can turn out to be 3 of the 4 days of the week. So that's why I say track on different days to help you learn about your diet. Also, pay attention to added sauce, butters, condiments. They really add up. Little nibbles. A peanut butter cup, a Reese's peanut butter cup has 105 calories. That's something you really can eat without thinking twice about it. Do any of your beverages contain calories, and how often are you eating out? Inevitably, that food is going to have more calories in it. This is the physical activity recommendations from the government. Um, so it's about 2.5 to 5 hours of moderate intensity activity a week, or a little less for vigorous, so an hour and 15 to 2.5 hours. This is what the difference is. Walking briskly would be considered moderate, whereas jogging or running for exercise purpose would be considered vigorous. But if these numbers are just not where you are right now, thinking about anywhere you can add more activity into your daily routine can be beneficial. So anywhere you can take the stairs, park farther away, get off a bus stop early. If you're watching TV, can you do a lap around the house during commercials? Instead of using those little grocery carts, if you're just getting a few things, maybe you can carry your groceries. Walk during phone calls. If you're a competitive person, you can wear a pedometer and shoot for new step goals. Your smartphone may already be tracking, or you can get a inexpensive pedometer on Amazon. And thank you very much. If you have any questions, I encourage you to call that number. Thank you.
Amy, that was great. I do have a couple of questions that I get all the time from my patients, and I hope that
Sure.
that we can share them all together.
Yeah.
The first one is, if you had, somebody is not following a diet and is having trouble adhering. If you had to recommend one thing, what would be the one thing that would give them the biggest bang for their buck?
Eliminating juice, soda, bottled tea, a bottle of soda's 250 calories. So it would take the average person about 2.5 miles to walk that off. And when you drink your calories, it doesn't give you the same satiation or fullness that eating your calories does.
Yeah, very good. I think that's also the one I go for is to really do not drink any of your excess calories.
Yeah.
Now, there's also the concern about, substituting sugars. And for example, substituting, if you use sugar in your tea or sugar in your coffee, substituting it for milk or other sweeteners. What are your thoughts on that regarding specifically for fatty liver disease,
Mhm.
MASLD?
Yeah, so are you talking about artificial sweeteners or are you just talking about like using
Yeah, mostly
cream?
artificial
Yeah,
sweeteners,
okay.
as well as, is honey any healthier than putting regular sugar?
No, overall, I'd say no. I think it really would depend on who you would ask and what they were looking at. If they were looking at something called the glycemic index, which looks at how fast a carbohydrate turns into blood sugar in your bloodstream, people would say, "Oh, well, honey has is better for that." But overall, honey is a sweetener just like anything else. As far as the artificial sweeteners, so the World Health Organization has recently classified these artificial sweeteners um, as, I believe, a carcinogen. But the US government, the FDA, considers them generally recognized as safe. I think it depends on the person. If you're somebody who drinks a lot of soda and it's just not realistic for you to say, I'm never going to drink soda again. And I can get you to switch to a diet version. Um, I'm going to consider that a win because that diet version is going to have no calories in it. And you're hopefully will be able to lose some weight. But if you're somebody who doesn't use those things, those artificial sweeteners, then I don't think there's any reason to start.
To start. Okay. And do you mentioned a little bit about calorie counting,
Mhm.
and that's sort of what I recommend. I tell patients that calorie counting every day is really not feasible, but if they can get a couple of days where they screen themselves, and get a sense of calories, is there a recommended amount of calories that you should drop? And how often? So for example,
Yeah.
should I go from a 2,500 calorie a day to 1,500 and in how long a period of time?
Yeah, I think getting a baseline for yourself, like just tracking your calories like for a day to get a baseline and then wherever you're starting at, trying to reduce by 500 is probably a realistic goal. Some say 500 to 1,000. I think doing 500 to start is a good place to start. I don't expect your diet to be perfect tomorrow. So if you just want to take incremental steps to get to where you want to be, um, and you're going to subtract even that 250, so you're going to subtract a soda a day and you're going to start on that and that's what you're going to work on for this month, then great. Get to a place where you're no longer craving that soda and that's going to help you in the long run. And then the next month, you can say, okay, I conquered my soda habit. This month, I'm going to try to eat more vegetables. But yeah, I think subtracting about 500 from where you're starting from is a good place to start. And then when you get in what's called a weight plateau, which inevitably is going to happen where, humans, we lose weight and then we plateau. That's just how our bodies work. So when you get into that plateau, maybe you open up that food tracker app again and see where your calories are coming from, or maybe you're eating some hidden calories you didn't know about. And then maybe you can subtract another 500 or 250 from there. But yes, that's a great question because if you Google, this stuff, they'll say like, oh, 1,200 calories a day for a woman. But if you're starting out,
That's not
eating
feasible.
way more, then you're going to set yourself up to fail.
Yeah.
And it's not realistic for the majority of people to
Yeah,
eat
I
that
agree.
little.
I think, knowing where you are to start, it's a good point. It's a good starter point. So tracking a couple of days, like you said, and then setting up slow goals. So don't try to like go down to, 1,000 calories a day very soon, very quickly, but just slow and steady, basically. Um, after some of these classes, patients are recommended to follow up with a nutritionist and do a more one-to-one intake. What would you recommend the patients to bring and to be prepared for that one-on-one nutritional assessment?
If you could write down your food journal for the day or bring in the app and log into the app so the dietitian can see it, great. And also bring in like, what are your barriers? What are the situations that you find it's the most difficult to follow or to meet your goals? And then you can, brainstorm with that dietitian to come up with some solutions and develop some measurable goals to overcome those barriers.
Okay, so maybe the same, 3 days worth of food,
Yeah. Mhm.
that food diary, maybe a working day, a
Yeah.
non-working day, and a weekend. I think that's a very good idea. And then, like you said, some insightfulness as to where you think your barriers for food might be, or where you find yourself breaking your own rules, basically.
Mhm.
All right, very good. And then what do you think about, I get this question all the time. What do you think about intermittent fasting?
I think intermittent fasting is a great tool, especially for people who tend to be nighttime snackers or nighttime grazers. Um, having a cutoff time where I'm not going to eat anymore just kind of flips a switch in some of those people's minds, and it really helps them achieve, get rid of all those nighttime calories. Um, I think it really depends on the person and your schedule. So if you're a person who works at night, obviously, intermittent fasting might be a bigger challenge for you than for somebody else. And also, if you have diabetes and you're on insulin, intermittent fasting, it may cause your blood sugar to go low. So that might not be the right regimen for you. But I think it can be a good tool for some people. But I also, think um, you can achieve weight loss without doing intermittent fasting if it doesn't work into your schedule and you just really pay attention to your portions and everything throughout the day. Make sure you're not snacking just to snack.
All right. And then the last question I promise is, somebody with a smaller budget. Fruits and vegetables
Hmm.
can be very expensive and
Yeah,
one of the most expensive parts of the supermarket. So, what
sure.
kind of recommendations would you give somebody with a smaller budget who's having difficulty affording, healthier foods?
Yeah. So, the first thing would be shop in season. Also, frozen vegetables and they've looked at this nutrient for nutrient wise, are just as healthy for you as the fresh versions on the produce stand, and they tend to be a lot cheaper. So, as long as you're buying a frozen vegetable that doesn't have any added, seasonings or sauces to it, that that would be a good way. If you buy a lot of canned produce, that's okay. Try to get a less salt version, or if you can't find that, what you can do is you can bring them home, put them in a colander when you're ready to eat them, wash them off, and that theoretically rinses away some of that salt. Um, Beans are very inexpensive. They are a plant source of protein. They fill you up. So those would be things that I would go for frozen, canned beans, and shop in season.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Amy, for your great advices. And I think this will be very helpful for our patients who struggle with both MASLD as well as diabetes. And we know those are very diseases that go hand in hand. So it was definitely a great resource for both set of patients. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Good
Amy.
luck, everybody.
Bye bye.